Commander Vrel of the Castharian Empire, had seen a lot of impossible things in his 40 cycles of military service. He had watched solar storms tear through battle cruisers like tissue paper. He had witnessed entire planets crack open under the weight of gravitational weapons. He had even on one memorable occasion seen his second-in-command try to eat what humans called a ghost pepper and subsequently require medical intervention. But this was something else entirely. The human stood in the center of the detention cell, arms crossed, looking about as concerned as someone waiting for a particularly slow elevator. Her name was Lieutenant Maya Torres, according to the datapad that kept glitching every time Vrel tried to read it, which was in itself suspicious. Nothing made Castharian technology glitch. Their systems could survive electromagnetic pulses that would fry every circuit within 3 solar systems. Yet here they were. So, Maya said, tapping her foot in a rhythm that seemed deliberately designed to irritate him. Are we going to stand here all day? Or are you going to tell me why you yanked me off my transport? Vrel's translator implant struggled with her casual tone. Humans had this infuriating habit of sounding relaxed even when they should be terrified. His own species, the Castharians, had evolved past such inefficient emotional displays. They communicated their fear through the rational dimming of their bioluminescent scales. Very civilized, very logical. This human just smiled. You were transporting contraband through Castharian-controlled space, Vrel said, trying to regain some semblance of authority, specifically a container of what your manifest listed as farming equipment. It was farming equipment, Maya replied, examining her fingernails with the kind of bored interest usually reserved for bureaucratic meetings. Very advanced farming equipment. You know, for farming. For farming, Vrel repeated flatly. For farming. The kind of farming that requires military-grade fusion cores? Have you seen Earth vegetables lately? Maya asked, her expression completely serious. Those tomatoes don't grow themselves. Well, technically they do, but you get my point. Vrel felt his scales flickering in confusion. Behind him, his tactical officer, a young Castharian named Jess, who had only completed 3 cycles of service, made a choking sound that might have been suppressed laughter. Vrel shot her a look that could have melted hull plating. Regardless, Vrel continued, pulling himself back to the matter at hand, you will remain in custody until we can verify your story. The detention cell is constructed from reinforced durasteel alloy. It can withstand pressures equivalent to the core of a gas giant. The force field is powered by redundant generators. Even if you somehow manage to breach the physical barriers, which is impossible, the energy field would contain you. You will not escape. Maya looked around the cell with the kind of casual interest someone might show a moderately interesting museum exhibit. She walked over to one of the walls and rapped her knuckles against it. The sound echoed dully through the detention bay. Durasteel, huh? She said. That's the stuff they use on dreadnoughts, right? Correct. The same alloy that can supposedly survive direct hits from plasma cannons? Also correct. Cool, cool. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Then she punched the wall. The sound was like a thunderclap in an enclosed space. Every Castharian in the detention bay froze. Vrel's scales flickered so rapidly, they nearly strobed, because there in the supposedly impenetrable durasteel wall was a fist-sized dent, a perfect impression of human knuckles. In the strongest alloy known to the Galactic Council. Maya said, flexing her fingers. That actually hurt a little. You guys really don't skimp on quality, do you? Vrel's brain, which had served him faithfully through 4 wars, 2 political coups, and that incident with the ghost pepper, simply refused to process what he was seeing. The translator in his head kept trying to find words and coming up empty. That's not possible, Jess whispered from behind him. I can see that it's not possible, Vrel snapped, his voice climbing several octaves higher than was probably dignified for a commander. And yet somehow it happened anyway. Maya walked back to the center of the cell and sat down cross-legged on the floor. Look, I don't want any trouble. Just let me make one call to my captain, and we can sort this whole thing out. I'm sure it's just a paperwork mix-up. You know how bureaucracy is. A paperwork mix-up, Vrel repeated, his voice hollow. You just dented Durasteel with your bare hand, and you want to talk about paperwork. Hey, I take administrative errors very seriously, Maya said, completely straight-faced. My mom always said that proper filing could prevent 90% of galactic incidents. Rel turned to his tactical officer. Increase the force field strength to maximum, and get me a direct line to High Command. Now. As Jess scrambled to comply, Rel watched the human through the reinforced viewing panel. She had pulled out what appeared to be a small data pad from her pocket, and was now playing some kind of game. Her fingers moved across the screen with casual precision. Every few seconds she would make a small noise of satisfaction or disappointment. Sir, Jess said quietly, moving closer so the human wouldn't overhear. The sensors are reading some very strange things. Define strange. Her bone density is off the charts. Her muscle fiber composition doesn't match anything in our database. And her cellular structure. Jess paused, double-checking her readings. Sir, her cells are regenerating at a rate that should be biologically impossible. The microfractures in her hand from punching the wall, they're already healing. Rel felt a cold sensation spreading through his thorax. In Castherian biology that usually meant either extreme fear or really bad indigestion. Given the circumstances, it was probably the former. What exactly are humans? He asked. More to himself than to Jess. According to the Galactic Council database, they're classified as a Category 4 species, moderate technological development, average physical capabilities, recently achieved faster than light travel. Nothing particularly noteworthy. That, Rel said, gesturing at the dent in the wall, is not average physical capabilities. No, sir. It definitely is not. The communications panel chimed, indicating that the connection to High Command had been established. A holographic projection materialized above Rel's command console, showing the stern face of Admiral Cross. The Admiral's scales were a deep navy blue, a color that indicated both high rank and advanced age. She had served in the Castherian military for over 100 cycles, and had a reputation for being absolutely terrifying. This had better be important, Commander, Cross said without preamble. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting with the Defense Council. We have a situation, Admiral, Vrel began, trying to keep his scales from flickering nervously. We detained a human for smuggling, and she just punched a hole in a Durasteel wall. There was a long pause. Admiral Cross's expression didn't change, but her scales dimmed slightly. Repeat that, she said slowly. The human punched the wall, Admiral, the Durasteel wall, and dented it. Another pause. Longer this time. Commander Vrel, Admiral Cross said, her voice taking on the kind of dangerous calm that preceded very bad things. How much sleep have you gotten in the last cycle? I'm not hallucinating, Admiral. I have it on video. Multiple angles. I can send you the footage. Do that. Immediately. Vrel gestured to Jess, who quickly transmitted the security recordings to High Command. They all waited in tense silence as Admiral Cross reviewed the footage. Vrel could hear Maya humming in her cell. It sounded like some kind of Earth song, something about never giving someone up or letting them down. The translator struggled with the idiom. By the eternal stars, Admiral Cross breathed, her scales flickering rapidly. Is this some kind of human augmentation? Cybernetics? Chemical enhancement? Our sensors show no artificial implants. Admiral, no traces of performance-enhancing drugs. As far as we can tell, this is just how she is. Just how she is, Cross repeated. A human who can damage Durasteel with her bare hands is just how she is. Yes, Admiral. Do you understand what this means, Commander? Vrel absolutely understood what this meant. If one human could do this, what could all of them do? Earth had a population of approximately 8 billion. If even a fraction of them had this kind of strength, the entire power balance of the galaxy would shift overnight. We need to run more tests, Cross said decisively. Find out the limits of her abilities, and for the love of the eternal stars, do not let her escape. Understood, Admiral. What about her request to contact her captain? Absolutely not. We can't risk alerting Earth to our concerns. Keep her isolated, keep her contained, And Vrel? Yes, Admiral. If she tries to escape, do not attempt to physically restrain her. Use sedation gases, long-range stunning weapons. Anything that doesn't require getting within arm's reach. The transmission ended, leaving Vrel alone with his thoughts and one increasingly bored human. He turned back to the viewing panel. Maya had finished her game and was now doing some kind of stretching exercise. She bent herself into positions that made Vrel's spine ache just looking at them. "Commander," Jess said nervously, "I think you should see this." Vrel walked over to his tactical officer's station. The sensor display was showing real-time readings of the detention cell, specifically, readings of the force field. The power consumption was climbing. "What's happening?" Vrel demanded. "I don't know, sir. The force field is operating normally, but it's drawing more and more energy to maintain cohesion. It's almost like something is pushing against it from the inside." They both looked at the viewing panel. Maya was still stretching, moving through what appeared to be a yoga routine. She wasn't touching the force field, wasn't even close to it. And yet, the power consumption continued to rise. "Maybe it's a malfunction," Jess suggested hopefully. "Run a diagnostic." "Already on it, sir. All systems showing green. No malfunctions detected." The power consumption kept climbing. 70%, 80%, 90%. "Sir," Jess said, her voice tight with stress, "if this continues, the generators won't be able to keep up. The force field will collapse. Reroute power from non-essential systems. Life support can drop to minimal levels. Shut down everything except primary operations." As Jess worked frantically at her console, Vrel watched Maya complete her stretching routine and stand up. She walked over to where the force field shimmered faintly in the air, barely visible except for a slight distortion. She tilted her head, studying it with the expression of someone trying to solve a mildly interesting puzzle. Then she smiled, and Vrel knew with the absolute certainty of someone who had survived this long by trusting his instincts, that everything was about to go very, very wrong. Maya raised one hand and pressed it gently against the force field. The power consumption spiked instantly to 110%. Alarms started blaring throughout the detention bay. Red emergency lighting activated automatically. "She's overloading the generators," Jess shouted over the alarms. "Sir, we need to shut down the force field before the feedback surge damages the entire power grid." "Do it." The force field collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. Maya stepped calmly out of the cell, still smiling that infuriating human smile. "So," she said pleasantly, as chaos erupted around her, "about that phone call?" Commander Vrel had exactly 3 seconds to make a decision that would either save his career or end it spectacularly. In those 3 seconds, several thoughts flashed through his mind in rapid succession. First, he remembered his training instructor, a grizzled veteran named Cass, who had once told him that retreat was not cowardice when facing an opponent you could not possibly defeat. It was called tactical repositioning, and it kept you alive long enough to find a better strategy. Second, he remembered that Admiral Cross had specifically ordered him not to let the human escape. Third, and most importantly, he remembered that his pension would not pay out if he died doing something monumentally stupid. "Seal the detention bay," he roared, slamming his hand on the emergency lockdown button. Massive blast doors began sliding shut at every exit, designed to contain even the most dangerous prisoners. They were rated to withstand explosive decompression, antimatter bombs, and pretty much everything short of a supernova. Maya glanced at the closing doors with mild interest, then looked back at Vrel. "You know, in retrospect, that might have been an overreaction." "An overreaction?" Vrel's voice went up so high that his translator temporarily switched to a frequency only small rodents could hear. He cleared his throat and tried again. "You just walked through a military-grade force field like it was a soap bubble." "To be fair, it kind of was a soap bubble," Maya said reasonably. "I mean, from my perspective, no offense to your engineering team, I'm sure they worked very hard on it." The blast doors sealed with a heavy clang that echoed through the bay. Vrel watched as the locking mechanisms engaged, 12 separate bolts of reinforced titanium alloys sliding into place. Each bolt was 30 centimeters thick, The doors themselves were 1/2 meter of compressed metals that did not officially exist in the Galactic Council's periodic table. He felt marginally better. Marginally. "Jess," he said quietly, "activate the gas dispersal system, sedative blend 7. "Sir, that's enough sedative to knock out a Thraxian warbeast." "I am aware of the dosage. Do it anyway." Jess input the commands and vents opened in the ceiling. A faint hissing sound filled the detention bay as colorless, odorless gas began flooding the enclosed space. Maya sniffed the air experimentally. "Is that supposed to make me sleepy?" she asked. "In approximately 15 seconds, yes." "Huh. Interesting." Maya pulled out her datapad again and started tapping at the screen. "Hey, do you guys have wireless access in here? I was in the middle of a really good level, and I'd hate to lose my progress." Rel stared at her. 15 seconds passed, then 30, then a full minute. Maya continued playing her game, occasionally making small noises of concentration. She did not appear even slightly drowsy. "Jess," Vril said slowly, "confirm that the sedative system is functioning correctly." "Confirmed, sir. Gas concentration is at optimal levels. Sensors show. They show that it's definitely in the air." "Then why is she still conscious?" "I have no idea, sir." Maya looked up from her datapad. "Oh, is the gas thing not working? Sorry, I probably should have mentioned. Humans have pretty robust respiratory systems. We evolved on a planet with a ridiculously active biosphere. You know, the kind where everything is constantly trying to kill everything else. Our bodies got really good at filtering out toxins. It's why we can drink alcohol for fun even though it's literally poison." "You drink poison for fun?" Jess asked, momentarily distracted from the crisis. "Oh yeah, Friday nights on Earth get pretty wild. There's this thing called karaoke where we drink fermented plant matter and then sing badly in public. It's great." Rel felt his scales flickering in what he was fairly certain was the Castharian equivalent of a nervous breakdown. "Commander to all security personnel, we have a Code Violet situation in Detention Bay 3. Repeat, Code Violet." "Sir," Jess said urgently, "did you just call a Code Violet? That's reserved for station-wide catastrophic emergencies. Does this look like anything less than a catastrophic emergency to you?" "Fair point, sir." The security channel crackled to life. "This is Security Chief Rax. Commander, did you just call a Code Violet because of one human prisoner?" "Yes, sir. With all due respect, have you lost your mind? She punched through durasteel, walked through a force field, and is currently immune to enough sedative to kill a medium-sized mammal. So unless you have a better classification for this situation, I suggest you get your team down here immediately." There was a pause on the other end. "We're on our way. Rax out." Maya had wandered over to one of the sealed blast doors and was examining it with the same casual interest she had shown the durasteel wall. She ran her fingers along the seam where the door met the frame. "Please don't punch that," Vrel said, hating how much his voice sounded like begging. "I'm not going to punch it," Maya said, sounding offended. "I'm not some kind of vandal. I was just curious about the locking mechanism. It's actually pretty clever. You've got a redundant bolt system, with what looks like magnetic reinforcement and some kind of energy dampening field built into the door itself. That's smart. Prevents people from just cutting through with plasma torches." "How do you know all that from just touching it?" "I can feel the vibrations. The magnetic field has a distinct hum. The dampening field creates a kind of dead zone that's pretty noticeable if you pay attention." She tapped the door again. "Although, if I'm being honest, the whole system has a pretty obvious weak point." Rel's scales stopped flickering entirely, freezing in the pattern that indicated absolute dread. "What weak point?" "I probably shouldn't say. Professional ethics and all that." "You're a smuggler." "Alleged smuggler," Maya corrected. "And I never said I was good at following rules. I just have a personal code about not helping people break into or out of places without proper motivation." "What would constitute proper motivation?" Maya pretended to think about it. "Well, for starters, you could let me make that phone call I keep asking about. Or you could just tell me what this is really about, because we both know this isn't about farming equipment." Before Vrel could respond, the emergency access hatch on the far side of the detention bay opened with a pneumatic hiss. Security Chief Rax entered, followed by 6 of his best personnel. They were all carrying what Vrel recognized as Mark 7 stun rifles, weapons designed to incapacitate targets at range without permanent damage. They also had on full combat armor, which seemed like a sensible precaution given the circumstances. Rax was a Castharian of the old school, with scales so dark they were almost black and a scar running across his left eye that he claimed came from a bar fight with a draconian mercenary. He took one look at Maya, then at the dented wall, then back at Maya. "That's a human," he said flatly. "Very astute, Chief," Vrela replied. "Humans are Category 4. They're not supposed to be able to do that." He gestured at the wall. "I am aware. So what's your plan, Commander?" "I was hoping you had one." Rax made a clicking sound deep in his throat, the Castharian equivalent of a heavy sigh. He turned to his team. "Spread out. Maintain a perimeter. Do not under any circumstances get within arm's reach of the human. If she makes any sudden moves, hit her with everything we've got." The security team moved into position with practiced efficiency, forming a semicircle around Maya. She watched them with interest, still holding her datapad. "This seems like a lot of firepower for one unarmed person," she observed. "You damaged a durasteel wall with your bare hand," Rax said. "You are very much not unarmed." "That's actually a really good point," Maya conceded. "I never thought about it that way. I guess humans are kind of always armed, technically speaking." "That is possibly the most terrifying thing I've heard all cycle," Jess muttered from her position at the tactical console. Maya's datapad chimed. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. The casual amusement faded, replaced by something harder. Something that made Vrel's survival instinct start screaming. "Okay," she said quietly. "I tried to do this the nice way. I really did. But I just got a message from my ship, and apparently your people have been stalling my captain for the past 3 hours with some story about needing to verify our cargo manifest, which means you've been holding me here deliberately. Which means this isn't about smuggling at all." She looked up, and Vrel saw something in her eyes that he had missed before. It was the same look he had seen in the eyes of combat veterans, soldiers who had survived things that would break lesser beings. It was the look of someone who had fought and won against terrible odds, and who would do it again without hesitation if necessary. "So let me be very clear," Maya continued, her voice calm but carrying an edge that could cut through hull plating. "I'm going to walk out of here. You can either let me go peacefully, or you can try to stop me. But if you choose option 2, I promise you it's going to get expensive. Equipment damage, medical bills, therapy costs for the trauma. It adds up fast." "We have our orders," Rax said, though Vrel noticed his scales were flickering uncertainly. "You're not leaving until High Command clears it." "Your High Command doesn't get to decide where I go," Maya said. "See, there's this thing that humans take really seriously. It's called personal freedom. We're kind of obsessed with it. We fought wars over it. Multiple wars. Big ones. And we won." She started walking toward the sealed blast doors. The security team tensed, fingers on triggers. "Stop," Rax ordered. "One more step and we open fire." Maya kept walking. "You know what's funny? My captain is probably freaking out right now. She gets really protective of her crew, and when she's worried, she tends to make calls. Lots of calls. To people with titles like Ambassador and Fleet Admiral. And you know what happens when a human Fleet Admiral gets a call about one of their people being detained without cause." She was halfway to the doors now. The security team shifted nervously, looking at Rax for guidance. "They send bigger ships," Maya continued. "Ships with names like Indomitable and Unstoppable, and remember the Alamo, which, by the way, is a really weird name for a ship until you learn the history behind it. And those ships don't show up to negotiate. They show up to make a point." Vrel felt his earlier certainty crumbling. He had been so focused on the immediate threat that Maya represented that he hadn't thought about the larger implications. Earth was a council member in good standing. Detaining one of their personnel without proper cause was a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. Detaining one and then discovering she had unusual abilities would make it seem like they were targeting her specifically for research purposes, which, he realized with growing horror, was exactly what Admiral Cross had ordered him to do. "Stand down," he said quickly. "Sir?" Rax turned to look at him, scales flickering in confusion. "I said stand down, lower your weapons." But the Admiral said, "I don't care what the Admiral said. We're not starting an interstellar incident over a cargo inspection." He turned to Maya. "You're free to go. My apologies for the inconvenience." Maya stopped walking and looked back at him, surprise evident on her face. "Really? Just like that?" "Just like that. Although I would appreciate it if you could explain what you actually are, because everything I know about human biology says what you just did should be impossible." Maya smiled, but it was a gentler smile this time. Less mocking, more understanding. "That's the thing about humans, Commander. We're really good at doing impossible things. It's kind of our whole deal. We came from a planet that kept trying to kill us, and instead of dying, we just got tougher. We looked at the stars and decided we belonged there. We took tools and fire and stubbornness and built a civilization that spans solar systems." She walked back over to stand in front of Vrel, close enough that he had to resist the urge to step back. "You want to know what I'm made of? The same thing every human is made of. Mostly water, some minerals, a whole lot of carbon, but also hope, spite and an absolutely ridiculous refusal to accept limitations. We're the species that looked at flying and said we'll figure it out. We looked at diseases that killed millions and said not anymore. We looked at an entire galaxy full of older, more advanced species and said sure, we'll join your club." She held out her hand. Vrel looked at it for a moment, remembering the dent in the wall, before carefully extending his own hand. Her grip was firm but controlled, and he realized that she had been holding back the entire time. The punch that dented Durasteel hadn't been her showing off her strength. It had been her being careful not to break through completely. "I'll let my captain know this was all a misunderstanding," Maya said. "No harm, no foul, but maybe next time you want to study humans, try reading the cultural database first. We're pretty open about our capabilities, we're just usually too polite to demonstrate them unless someone gives us a reason." Vrel initiated the door unlock sequence, and the massive blast doors began sliding open with a deep grinding sound. Maya gave a casual wave to the security team and walked out, her datapad already in her hand as she typed out a message. The detention bay fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Rax slowly holstered his stun rifle. "So," he said eventually, "that happened." "Yes," Vrel agreed. "That definitely happened. Are we going to talk about how she basically threatened us with military action while also being completely friendly about it? That does seem to be a human specialty." Jess looked up from her console. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from a ship in orbit. It's identifying itself as the Earth vessel Meridian. They're requesting permission to retrieve their crew member." "Granted," Vrel said tiredly, "and send them our formal apologies along with a fruit basket or whatever humans consider an appropriate peace offering." "Fruit basket, sir? I don't know. Find something. Just make it clear we meant no offense, and have no intention of causing an interstellar incident." As Jess scrambled to comply, Admiral Cross's face appeared on the holo projector again. She did not look pleased. "Commander Vrel, I just received a very interesting communication from Earth's diplomatic corps. Would you care to explain why you released the human against my explicit orders?" Vrel straightened, his scales settling into the pattern that indicated calm determination. "With respect, Admiral, detaining her further would have caused exactly the kind of attention we were trying to avoid. Her captain had already filed diplomatic complaints. Another hour and we would have had Earth warships demanding answers, so you just let her go." "I made a tactical decision to prevent a larger conflict, sir." Cross studied him for a long moment. Her scales shifted through several colors as she processed his response. Finally, they settled into a pattern that might have been grudging respect. "You know what the real problem is, Commander?" she asked. "It's not that she was strong, it's not that she could break our restraints. It's that she didn't even consider us a real threat. She was inconvenienced. Mildly annoyed, but not afraid." "No, Admiral, she definitely wasn't afraid. Do you understand what that means for the galactic power structure?" Vrel thought about Maya's casual confidence, her complete certainty that she could handle anything they threw at her. He thought about her comment about impossible things being humanity's specialty. And he thought about the fact that Earth had 8 billion more just like her. "Yes, Admiral," he said quietly. "I believe I do." "Good. Because the Council is going to have some very serious discussions about human classification in the near future. Category 4 is clearly inadequate. The question is what we reclassify them as. Might I suggest Category 1, Admiral? Category 1 is reserved for species capable of posing an existential threat to galactic civilization." "I know, Admiral." Cross's scales flickered rapidly, then settled into a dark blue that indicated deep thought. "I'll take it under advisement." Cross out. The transmission ended. Vrel turned to find his entire staff staring at him. "Well," he said, trying to inject some normalcy back into the situation, "I think we've all learned something valuable today." "What's that, sir?" Jess asked. "Never, ever, try to detain a human unless you're absolutely certain you can hold them. And maybe not even then." Rax nodded slowly. "I'm putting that in the security manual. Humans, handle with extreme caution. Maybe just let them do their thing." "Solid plan, Chief." As his crew returned to their duties and the detention bay gradually returned to normal operations, Vrel pulled up the security footage of Maya's escape one more time. He watched her walk through the force field, completely unbothered by something that should have been impossible. He watched her examine the blast doors with casual expertise. He watched her face the entire security team without a hint of fear. And then he opened his personal files and started a new document. At the top he typed, "Unofficial Guide to Human Interaction for Junior Officers." The first line read, "Rule number 1. Do not make them angry. You will regret it." Somewhere in orbit, aboard the Meridian, Lieutenant Maya Torres was probably laughing about the whole situation. Probably telling her captain about the silly aliens who thought they could hold her with durasteel and force fields. Probably already moving on to the next adventure, the next impossible thing that humans would do just because someone told them they couldn't. And Vrel found himself smiling despite everything. Because she had been right about one thing. Humans were made of stubbornness and spite and an absolute refusal to accept limitations. It was, he reflected, going to make the galaxy a much more interesting place.